Today, I'm covering my simple financial tips. If you just do these 5 things, it will put you ahead of the majority of people living paycheck to paycheck today. Now, my name is Christina Spark. Welcome to my channel. I am a former chartered accountant. I hold a master's in professional accounting. I've worked in finance at a top global company, and I became a self-made millionaire by the time I was in my early 30s. But you know what? I actually had to teach myself most of these tips through reading a ton of books on personal finance, listening to hundreds of hours of podcasts. And the reason is because they don't really teach you this in school, even with my background. So it is absolutely no wonder to me why most people struggle with this topic. They find it confusing, intimidating. They just don't have the knowledge. So we're going to correct that today. And I'm going to distill 15 years of experience into 5 really beginner-friendly tips for you. And no matter who you are or what place you are starting from, it is never too late. I myself did not start saving $1 until I was 27 years old. So please stick with me and let's dive in. So my first tip is know your numbers, your financial snapshot. And the mistake people make is they actually don't know how much they're spending, or they're really not keeping track of it relative to how much they are earning. And that can lead to problems. If you spend more than you earn, that creates debt. If you are spending the same amount that you are earning, that's this living paycheck to paycheck situation where we're not actually saving for our future. The easiest way to get an understanding is to look at your credit card statement. So go to your online banking and download your credit card statement. I would suggest look back at least 6 months, and that's because your spending can really fluctuate month over month depending on what's going on in your life. So I'd say go back about 6 months and download that and just take a look at what your expenses are. A tip I have for you is to use AI to do this. Ask it to categorize your expenses and summarize it for you. And it will come back with this beautiful table of, all of your expenses. If you've never done this before, I guarantee you're gonna have a couple light bulb moments. For myself, when I did this recently, I realized I was spending an enormous amount of money on insurance. Through discovering this, I was then able to call my insurance provider and bundle a little bit better and then save on my premiums. So that's just one example, but you might find, I'm actually spending a lot more money on dining and eating out, and I could probably cut that pretty easily. Maybe I don't value it as much as I'm doing it. And then the other thing you want to look at is your income. So if you are a salaried employee, then this is quite straightforward. You just go to your online banking, look at how much is actually hitting your bank account every month. That is your after-tax income. If you are, say, a business owner, or perhaps you have different income streams, it's more complicated, I would also suggest you go back a certain period of time, maybe 6 months, to see how much you are earning on average. What is your to-do or your homework this week? Download your credit card statement, get an understanding of how much you are spending in the various categories, as well as figure out how much you are earning monthly. Tip number 2 is evaluate what good looks like. And a great place to start is the simple 50-30-20 rule. So we now understand our income as well as our expenses, but what do these numbers even mean? What am I aiming for here? The idea is that your after-tax income, so again, this is not your gross income or your salary, this is your after-tax income, how much is actually deposited into your bank account, how much of that is being spent on things you need, things you want, and savings. 50% is the sort of benchmark for things that you need. These are things like housing, utilities, food. These are things you must spend money on. 30% is on discretionary items. These are things like dining and eating out, travel, maybe shopping, etc. And 20% is on savings and extra debt repayment. This is the part where you're investing in your financial future. If you live in a big metropolitan city, like myself, I live in Sydney, Australia, we're having something called a housing crisis. We have rising interest rates, we have inflation, and therefore it's very, very hard to live within this rule of 50% on things you need. That is likely to be higher because your cost of housing is so high. So the idea here is that you need some type of way to figure out what's your current breakdown look like, and then set a goal for yourself of what is realistic. So perhaps a split of 70, 20, 10 is going to be a better, more realistic goal for you, and that is great. Now let's assume you've gone through the exercise and you find you have nothing left for savings at all. Now your options are you can go through your expenses and see where you can save some money, or you can make more money. And this is the part of the equation that's often better to influence, because unless you're living a lavish lifestyle, maybe there's not a huge amount of savings there to be had, and you actually need to spend money on those things. So ways to increase your income is number one, ask for a raise. Inflation continues to go up, and if your salary doesn't, then you're actually losing money by being there. The other great way to do this is, can you get a job offer at doing a similar role somewhere else and ask your company to match it? Or if you got a job offer, you can actually switch jobs. Thirdly, you can think of a side hustle. Is there a passion or hobby you're doing that you can think about monetizing? Do you have a few hours in your week that you could dedicate towards thinking about something there to earn more money? So these are just some creative ways. The other caveat I want to share about this section is it also depends on your current phase of life, and we have to be realistic here. Myself, I'm not even adhering to my own rule, and before you discredit me completely and click away, the reason is because I'm in a phase of life where I just had a baby. And so I'm taking maternity leave. And I can do that because I financially planned for it. So even though I am actually spending more money than I'm earning in this phase of life, I do have that nest egg that I can dip into so that I can do so without financial stress. So your to-dos for this section is take your financial snapshot from section 1, identify your current split, and then set up a goal split. It's more about the awareness. I don't think you need to go around and document every single thing that you're spending money on, although there are great apps these days that can help with the budgeting. But it's more about the consciousness of what are you spending money on. Tip number 3 is the money waterfall, understanding how to prioritize your savings. So now in step 1 and 2, we have an idea of how much we're going to set aside for savings. So let's say it's 20%. But what do you do with that? Do you stuff cash under your pillow, or do you throw it all in the stock market? There's actually a very clear prioritization of what you want to do with this money. The first thing you want to do is pay off any high interest debt. So this is typically credit card debt or buy now, pay later type debt. Credit card companies make so much money because they charge you very, very high interest on that debt. 21% is the current interest rate on credit card debt. And this will keep you in the cycle of poverty if you are not paying off your credit card and just accumulating more and more and more debt. It's impossible to build wealth with this type of debt. So that's why it's so important to pay that off first. Secondly, you're going to want to build a safety net. So the safety net is for that kind of rainy day emergency type fund that you need. And the general rule of thumb is to build between 3 to 6 months of your expenses into that fund. And you want to put this in a high interest savings account. That is going to be things like if you lose your job, if you have unforeseen medical expenses, you can access that money. The reason why we don't necessarily want to put this money into the stock market is because we want this money to be very easily accessible. If you put it in the stock market, you are not able to withdraw it as quickly. It will fluctuate in value, and it will also trigger a tax event. So this is money that you want to have easily accessible. So for this section, I would say the to-do or the homework here is to assess your financial situation and now make a plan for how you're going to pay off any high interest debt that you have. So I would suggest if you have, let's say, a 20% savings goal, put all of that towards paying off your debt until you are done. And then secondly, start building your safety net, open a new account of a high interest savings account called emergency fund, and even just start setting aside $50 a week or a month or whatever you can do to start building that up to reach your goal of between 3 to 6 months of expenses. Step number 4 is investing in future you. So this is about investing in your retirement. So if you're asking yourself, why do I have to care about retirement now? I'm young, can't I just enjoy that money and save when I'm older? So that would actually be a huge mistake. And it's because your greatest advantage to building wealth is time and a concept called compound interest. So compound interest, essentially a snowball effect that allows your investments to grow exponentially over time. So if you invest today, you'll earn a return on that investment, but then that return will own its own return, which owns its own return. And so you end up with a snowball effect of investments growing exponentially. And so just look at this graph. In this example, if you invest just $1,000 at the age of 20, that money can grow to over $43,000 by the time you're 75, assuming an average annual rate of return of 8% and assuming a small tax percentage of your retirement fund. Imagine you only started investing in your retirement when you were 45. You could just shift this whole graph to the right and you would be losing out on so much exponential growth. So I'm based in Australia, and in Australia we have something called the Superannuation. That is the retirement fund, and it's where you and your employer can both make contributions. The great thing about Australia is that it's actually the law that your employer must contribute 12% of your income into your retirement fund. Above and beyond that, you can also make voluntary contributions, which is known as salary sacrificing, and contribute even more to your super. But there is a cap, and that cap is $7,500 per quarter or $30,000 per year. That is the total that you and your employer can contribute. So when the money goes in, it is pre-tax, meaning you have not paid tax on it yet, according to the tax bracket you fall into. And the super fund itself takes a tax rate of 15%. And that's really advantageous because you are likely paying a much, much higher tax rate than 15%. And then when that money is invested and grows and you have capital gains and you have dividends, again, it is taxed at that very low 15% rate. But the beauty is that when you retire at 60 years old plus, then you're able to take all that money out tax-free. You don't have to pay any more tax on it. If your super fund is less than $500,000, you are able to contribute catch-up contributions, meaning in previous years, if you did not max out that $30,000 per year allowance that you have, then you can use up some of that money to contribute in the current year. So let's say, for example, that last year I only contributed $20,000 of the $30,000. That was the total that myself and my employer contributed together. Now this year, I'm in a better financial position. Let's say I have more savings to allocate. I can max out the $30,000 per year plus the $10,000 that I did not use in the previous year. So in the US, there is also a private fund that you and your employer do contribute into called the 401k. It is not required by law for your employer to give you retirement funds, but a lot of employers do. And where this becomes so advantageous is that most employers have a company match policy, meaning whatever you contribute into, your employer will match that. And they might match that dollar for dollar or even 50 cents on the dollar of whatever you contribute to. So for the 2025 tax year, the maximum you could contribute, and again, this is pre-tax dollars, is $23,500. And then your employer can contribute on top of that. So that's how the 401k works. Now, above and beyond that, there are other voluntary contributions, such as the traditional or Roth IRA. With that, there is a maximum as well of $7,000 per year that you can contribute into. The difference between the Roth and the traditional is just when you pay tax, with the traditional being pre-tax dollars going in and the Roth IRA being after-tax dollars going in, but they are both tax advantage. Main takeaway, if you are in the US, is you want to make sure that you are maxing out your $23,500 per year if you can, and then that allows you to maximize any employer match. So that is literally free money that they are giving you. So number one, find out wherever you're located, find out what's available to you. If you're employed, then you can reach out to your company's HR to ask what are the benefits to you. And then number two is take action. So depending on where you are, make a plan so that you can maximize this benefit. Tip number 5 is invest in the stock market. I know a lot of people find this topic confusing, or maybe they just think investing is only for really rich people, but actually it's so simple and anybody can do it. You don't need to know a thing in order to invest in the stock market, and you don't have to have a certain amount of money. You can invest whatever you got. The simplest way to do this is to invest in an index fund or a managed fund. So an index fund is essentially a basket of stocks. You may have heard of the S&P 500 before. That's 500 of the largest, most influential US companies, or the ASX 200. That's the 200 largest, most influential Australian companies. Let's assume you only have $100 to invest. Instead of just picking one company to invest in, you can actually invest in all of them through these index funds. So it's like owning a tiny little piece of lots and lots of companies. So some of those companies are going to perform really well and go up, and some of those companies are not going to perform and they'll go down. But on average, net, your money is going to give you a really great return. Investing in an index fund is a great way to diversify your investments, which is one of my first takeaways when investing in the stock market, is ensure that you do diversify. So you don't want to have all of your eggs in one basket, for the simple reason that, some stocks can perform really poorly and you can potentially lose everything. So the best way is to own all of it. My second takeaway is to set it and forget it, automate the investing process. It should be boring. It should be something that you just kind of set up on a, say monthly basis. You allocate a certain amount of money to invest in the index funds, and then you just forget. So Fidelity allegedly did a review over 10 years of which of their accounts were the highest performing over time. And what they found was the group that outperformed every other group were people that were dead and people that forgot their password. So that just proves that you don't want to be tinkering with it. You want to set it and forget it. The problem is if you, panic and you try to time the market, that actually just leads to more problems and losing money over time. The best bet you have is to just invest in the long term. You definitely do not want to sell within 12 months because there will be tax consequences. So the third takeaway is to hold on to this investment for the long term, at least 1 year. So in Australia, what's called a short-term gain, which is if you hold on to that investment for less than 12 months and you're able to sell it for more than you bought it for, aka a gain, then it'll just tax like your regular income. However, if you hold on to it for more than 12 months and you have a gain, you get a 50% discount on your tax bill. So that is a really good incentive. In the US, it's a similar concept where a long-term gain is taxed at a much lower rate than a short-term gain. To make this actionable, like the easiest way to get started, I would say, is to just either choose a brokerage account or go to an investment fund itself like Vanguard and open an account. Find the index fund you are looking for and then just transfer money into that account. And that's pretty much an easy way to get started. I actually like the face-to-face nature of talking to someone about this. So I went into a reputable bank. This was in the US. I went into Charles Schwab and I just set up an appointment and actually talked to a financial advisor. And we set up a managed fund that day based on my own risk tolerance. And it performed really well over time. So that is my to-do list for you for the week. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed this, watch out for my next video where I cover the 5 best life decisions I made to make me a millionaire. These are definitely things you can't cover in a book. These are lifestyle choices I had to make. If you enjoyed the video, I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment and share other topics you'd like me to cover. And lastly, if you could please hit subscribe to keep informed of future videos, and it helps me make more videos. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.